Hi, this is Tara. Welcome to Sky Gazing. Today we're studying Sutra number 47. But before we do, just a request. I noticed from the data that 83% of you, if you're watching this on YouTube, are not actually subscribed. So I just request if you could please click subscribe, like and share if you feel like it. But thank you so much. Very grateful. So today let's study Sutra number 47. Nirvichāra-vaiśāradye-adhyātma-prasādaḥ. Nirvichara is refined, subtle reflection. Vaisharadya is actually, it means flowing like a river. But what is it a flow of? It's a maturation of skill, of proficiency, of expertise. Adhyatma, inner essence. Prasada. Prasada is a very beautiful word. I know most of us think it means the fruit of the tapasya or the penance or the devotion, the offering that is given back to us when we visit the temples. But pra is before, shad is to dwell. So it is basically the settling down of the mind. It is serenity. And that is the context that Maharishi Ved Vyasa uses it in. He says, the undisturbed flow of the ultra meditative causes subjective luminosity. Undisturbed flow is a pure and constant flow, not overpowered by disturbing energy, that is rajas, inertia, tamas, of the essence sattva, of the will to know, which is the subtle element of buddhi, if you remember, and the very self of light with the veil of impurity covering it removed. When this undisturbed flow is secured for the ultra meditative trance, the yogi attains, he says, subjective luminosity. Please note the qualification because it will come in handy in later sutras. His intellectual vision becomes clear with regard to objects as they exist, irrespective of all sequence. And so it has been said, having reached the stage of intellectual luminosity, the wise man is no longer an object of compassion. He looks upon and compassionates others as one upon a height looks down upon those in the plains. So this is, I think, pretty simple, but as in simple to say, not to attain clearly. But so Swami Satyananda says, after becoming absolutely perfect, so he is using the Vaisharadya in the meaning of absolutely perfect. In nirvichara samadhi, the spiritual light dawns. Nirvichara samadhi is the highest form of superconsciousness. The spiritual illumination comes into the mind in the final stage of it. And after that, there's an end of consciousness where intellectual functioning ceases completely. Hereafter, different consciousness overtakes the aspirant. So, Swami Satyananda explains this very interestingly. He says, basically, the yogi experiences a death. Now, in the Puranas, there are stories of the deaths of the jiva, and then the Purushas conduct the soul to different lokas. But the concept of death, he says here, means the death of the intellect, not the death of the body. So there is a stage in spiritual meditation when the consciousness which is pervaded and permeated by intellectual consciousness completely dies out. In the same way, the intellectual consciousness gives rise to different kinds of consciousness. That stage is achieved by self-realized persons, perceivers of the self. You can assume somebody like Ramana Maharshi or Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or Sri Aurobindo. That is, this stage of perception it's a special instrument. It's a special form of consciousness which is called Atma Drashta. Atma meaning self and Drashta meaning seer. When the nirvichara stage is perfected, a different aspect of awareness is born. And those people who practice dhyana achieve the state of awareness, which is said that it is a shadow that you see in Trattika. When there is no consciousness about the world or about yourself. A common form of Trattika that is practiced in a lot of these workshops is kind of like stare at a lamp until you get tears in your eyes or something like that. That is not Trattika. Trattika is when you are, say, staring at, which we have studied, which is complete absorption, and there is this sort of, the observer becomes the observed. So at that stage, he says, when the yogi reaches the stage, that is, the luminosity appears at the end of nirvichara samadhi, samapati, that is the trataka that you have experienced in the process of getting here is basically a picture. I've heard a guru say this to me. All meditation that we practice pretty much in this life, all sadhana, is basically a photograph of the real thing. And so it's like you're given this photograph in your hand so that you can look at it, and when you see the real thing you can recognize it. But even all the so-called bliss that we feel, that we experience at our level, definitely at my level, is just an image. It's just something that says, oh, this is what it will look like, so you can recognize it when you get there. But it's the magnification and amplification of what we'll actually feel is so immense, that it's probably inconceivable for most of us. So that shadow called chaya, okay, so when he's talking about the trataka being the shadow, he's saying that shadow is called chaya, is the last trace of your intellect, which is again replaced by something else. And he says black people who practice black magic, psychics, mahasiddhas, they are able to experience these things, but somewhere they are getting sidetracked. And this is an important thing to keep in mind as you practice. The more you practice, the more you will realize that you are experiencing certain siddhis, okay, abilities that come with the practice. But it is also important to remember that the mind is basically a house of mirrors. And if you allow yourself to be sidetracked, then you can go down a road which it is very hard to get out of. Which is why, when you hear the stories of these yogis who may be very accomplished in various forms of practice, asana, sadhana, but then they get mired in ego, or inflict abuse upon others, or their head is turned by the accumulation of wealth. Why does that happen? Because they've sort of, as they practice, they develop siddhis. These siddhis basically come with the lure of a shiny object, but it brings rajas. It brings a chance to show off your capability, but also will entrap you in that arising aspect of the self, which is ego, which is greed, which is ahankara, which is matsarya, lobha, all of that. So, which is why in yoga we practice the yamas and niyamas very rigorously. And I've heard it said that these are not things that you stop practicing. There is no point at which you say, I've practiced my yamas and niyamas and I'm done. You practice until, and there's a reason why, because even when BKS Iyengar is explaining yamas and niyamas, especially when he's explaining vairagya and abhyasa, you just go and read what he's written, and he says the abhyasa is what is sustained by vairagya. If you practice one without the other, why do we practice Ashtanga Yoga? If you practice one without the other, you will develop siddhis, but you will spin out of control. So vairagya sustains abhyasa, and abhyasa sustains the vairagya. Otherwise, you will become so detached that there will be no practice. So it is necessary to maintain that balance. That is why Ashtanga Yoga is prescribed. And I would recommend that if you're a serious practitioner, you continue to, see, we're all mortal, we're very, very human, very, very fallible, and so we're going to make mistakes. And we've seen that there are masters who have made mistakes, so who are we, right? But the effort and the intention, that is why we set the intention to maintain the practice as it should be practiced, and that is why we practice with a certain amount of supervision and respect and humility. Okay. Just wanted to say that. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, Swami Vivekananda at this point is like, I'm not going on and on, which Osho more than compensates. Swami Vivekananda says the concentration without reasoning being purified, the chitta becomes firmly fixed, and he's done with that. BKS Iyengar says from proficiency in nirvichara samapati comes purity. Sattva luminosity flows undisturbed, kindling the spiritual light of the self. When intelligence and consciousness, the essence of mean, remains non-reflective, profound and unconditioned, the vehicles of the soul, the anatomical body, the organs of action, the sense of perception, the mind, intelligence, and consciousness are illumined. Knowledge and understanding of the real state of the soul manifests in luminosity. Osho says, and what Osho's explanation is very beautiful here for this one. He says, on attaining the utmost purity of the nirvichara stage of samadhi, there's a dawning of the spiritual light. And he says, nirvichara-vaiśāradye-adhyātma-prasādaḥ. The word prasad is very, very beautiful. It means grace. When one is in his own being settled, you coming home, there's a sudden benediction. All that he always desired is suddenly fulfilled. All that you wanted to be, suddenly you are. And you have not done anything for it. You have not made any effort for it. In nirvichara samadhi, one comes to know that in one's very nature, deepest nature, one is always fulfilled. And what is utmost purity? He says, when not even a thought of no thought exists. That is utmost purity. And he likens it to a mirror in which there is no reflection. The mind is completely God. And he says, this is what Patanjali says. Nirvichāra-vaiśāradye-adhyātma-prasādaḥ. Suddenly grace descends. And he says, you're not aware right now. Flowers are being showered on you, but you are so empty that you cannot see them. Only through the eyes. He says, you are not empty, so you cannot see them. Only through the eyes of emptiness can they be seen, because they are not flowers of this world. They are flowers from another world. And he says that all those who have attained enlightenment or attained these stages of samadhi, they agree on one point, that in the final attainment, one feels that one has received for no reason at all. Everything is fulfilled. One feels so blessed, and one knows that one has not done anything for it. There is no sort of equation of, I have done this hard work and therefore I have got this. You cannot say that you have attained it. You can simply say you have not done anything. That is the meaning of grace. Prasadaha. Without doing anything on your part, it is happening. In fact, it has always been happening, but you have been missing it. You're so engrossed with the object, that's why you cannot look within. When your eyes are not turned inwards and your eyes are moving outward. So he says, you're born already fulfilled. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to make a single step. This is the meaning of prasadaha. Then there is the dawning of spiritual light. You have always been surrounded by darkness. With the awareness moving inwards, there is light. And in that light, you come to know there has been no darkness, just that you were not in tune with yourself. And he says, if we understand this, there is no struggle. There is no struggle to attain. Just sitting silently, everything is possible. Grace just descends on you. The light just emerges. Just continue with the practice. And I think I will add a little thing, if you don't mind, is just surrender. Just surrender to the practice, surrender to the guru, surrender to the grace, surrender to the luminosity, and it will emerge. And he tells a very beautiful story. He says, when Buddha was dying, Ananda, his disciple, asked him, he was crying, and he said, what will happen to us now? You were here and we couldn't attain, and now you will no longer be here. What will we do? Buddha is reported to have said, now love my absence. Be attentive to my absence. So for 500 years, no statues of the Buddha were made so that his absence could be felt. And instead of statues, only the Bodhi tree was depicted. Temples existed, but not with a Buddha statue, just a Bodhi tree, a stone Bodhi tree. An absent Buddha underneath, and people will go and sit and watch the tree and try to watch the absence of Buddha under the tree. If you've ever been to Bodh Gaya, this is the most, I had the good fortune of spending 15 days there last year, just sitting every day under the Bodhi tree just in front. And the absence is so present. If you sit there, I mean, I'm sure many of you have experienced it. Then by and by, but he says by and by the subtle object was lost, and people started talking, what is there to meditate? Only a tree is there, where is the Buddha? And so then they started creating objects to meditate on. But he says when the object completely disappears, the presence of the object disappears, and the absence of the object disappears. Thought disappears, no thought disappears, mind disappears, and the idea of no mind disappears. Only then have you attained to the utmost. Now, this is the moment when suddenly grace descends on you. This is the moment when flowers shower. This is the moment when you're connected with the source of life and being. This is the moment when you are no more a beggar, you have become the emperor. This is the moment when you are crowned. Before it, you were on the cross. This is the moment the cross disappears and you are crowned. Very beautiful. One of the reasons why I included Osho in this is his spirituality, his understanding is very modern, but also extremely devotional and very, very deep. And Barbara Stoller Miller says, the profound clarity of intuitive cognition brings inner tranquility. She more or less clubs the next 5 sutras together in her explanation. So it sounds more like a summary of the whole samadhi process. So I'm not going to read that exactly today. We'll read it as we near the end of the samadhi pada. Thank you so much for listening. Please do like, share, subscribe. Send me your questions and I'll try and address them in the summary episode. Thank you.